Heyo kiddos. Thank you so much, Sony, for the nonsense internet reminder. Uh, just making it so that I know that I've hit the 1 minute mark and can begin talking. Uh, Internet's fine. So, if you'd followed the, I don't know, 16 hours of separated into two different, maybe more than that actually. But the last two live broadcasts. Hey, welcome. I guess I gotta grab my phone now and see if anybody says anything in chat. How did two people jump in before? Maybe I missed the first one, but whatever. Um, so if anybody had caught the previous live broadcasts, you'd understand why this is funny. If you didn't, well, I don't know what to tell you. But those things were like, oh, hey, what's up, OG Sour Dude? And apparently we lost the other person? Okay, well, whatever. Haven't done anything yet, but that's fine. Um, so, I don't believe OG Sour Dude was here for any of the, any of those, I don't know, 16, maybe more, maybe closer to 20 hours separated into two different live broadcasts. One kind of started like this, where I was just opening up 3 packs or whatever, 4 packs maybe, and got a pull and felt like talking about the event and the card that I had and stuff like that. I don't have enough content to be able to do that. It hasn't really stopped me from talking for hours upon hours before, but yeah, this is just a super, 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 super hard troll from the game for sure. And it's honestly hilarious. I don't know. I'm the type where I need some water here. I'm the type where, like, if you can't, if you can't laugh at yourself, which is what I'm trying to do here, then I don't know what you're doing, man. Like you gotta be able to do it. It's like a requirement of life. Um, and Yeah, and the only other thing that's kind of like that is I like to kind of admit when I'm wrong. We're not really getting that here. You got that earlier in the 16 hours when I had high expectations for this event and told the person that was very negative going into it, who thought that it was going to be terrible, that they were way off, and the event was going to be something much different than it was, and that it was going to be awesome. And then I have no idea why, but I hate the event for a bunch of different reasons. I think the 5 MSPs are amazing, and everything else about it is terrible. And for some reason, the person who told me and everyone else that they have as followers that the event was going to be terrible and they were going to hate it, they think it's one of the best and most balanced events that have come out yet, which I've yet to get a response on that as to what in the world he happens to be thinking. So I don't like the fact that we don't get the little ice noise in the background. I can do that if I open up the other card, but I think there's a chance that I'm going to be literally rickrolled by the second card, even as hard as this first one. But it's difficult to be to be to be totally trolled any harder than this particular card, just based off of what has already come for us in this particular event, because it's outside of the MSPs, which again I think are all great. I've already got 2 of them from doing the sets, so I certainly it would suck to get another MSP that is untradeable, that is a duplicate. I did that during the heavy hitters event, and that was also hilarious. But if you're doing, whether it's, in my opinion, whether it's a silver reroll or a gold reroll, it's not that big of a deal, man. It's 8 cards. The silvers for me, I've got a week's worth of, if I do every hour, I've got a week's worth of silvers that are just chilling there that I guess once the market supposedly opens for me tomorrow, the day after, or if they wait until Tuesday when they're back in the office, I guess I could try to sell those silvers. And somebody was saying I can get like close to 500 for them, even though like the highest one, the 73s, have a quick sell of 200. But whatever, I have no way of knowing that because I can't participate in the auction house. But back to the event, yeah, outside of getting I'd love to get an MSP from literally anything, and if they're untradeable from a reroll or whatever, clearly I think anyone would want to get one of the three that they don't have, as opposed to a duplicate of one of the two that they have already. And that'd be a pretty hard troll, but not as bad, in my opinion, as this exact card. And I say that I can't go through the whole event. If you're completely unfamiliar with the event and didn't watch any of the live broadcasts or whatever, I don't know, I'd say go and watch that. However, the last one, don't listen at all to the last at least hour or two of that. It had nothing to do with the game at all, and was like even way more tangential and all over the place and completely unrelated and just nonsense than I normally do. I'm assuming that both of those broadcasts have now been put up as replays on YouTube, but I don't actually know that for sure, to be honest. And I clicked super quick onto this live one without even looking at what else was there, because it said there were a couple people in the room and I wanted to see if they were chatting. So Barrett Hayton, specifically, why this is such an absolute hard troll for me. And there's maybe the Jack Hughes would be, no, the Jack Hughes would be a pretty hard troll also, but not quite as much of one, because he didn't really have a card last year, so there was kind of no, like, what came out. Not necessarily this time, but more closer to January last year in NHL 19, specifically for Barrett Hayton, and how much I loved his card last year and loved playing with it and had it on the team for quite some time. And so to kind of give my best super quick recap of my thoughts on the event and why it is so horrific and the complete opposite of what should have been done. Again, outside of the fact that the 5 MSPs are all great, it'd be kind of, they could do it for sure if they wanted to, but it would be difficult to give 5 91s in a game that up until 2 or 3 days before had only 2 91s total in the game that were there from the first day, and then the 2 days before there was a 91 McDavid primetime inform for November. And there's going to be a few other ones like that are going to be, 89, 90, 91 in this month. So, that's happening, and that might have been part of their logic in terms of, why this was going to be the first event that they were going to do 91s. So the MSPs, again, are perfectly fine. I have no real issue with any of those. I take complete issue with literally every other card in the first week of releases of the event. I think that first off, I think it's the wrong event to do right now, and it's not just because I thought I had a better idea. I'm more than capable. I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but I'm more than capable of thinking like, oh, I had like a good idea on something, and then I see what was actually done, and I'm like, oh no, that was basically like better than kind of what I would have done, or what I had in mind or whatever. And in fact, most of this game, most of NHL 20, after having gone through 19, the general concept, kind of lowering overall ratings, and then how to approach that, leaving out milestones and only including informs as team of the week, and the prime times. Swapping out Evos for fantasy cards, and being able to not really have them be dynamically rated. They can't go down once they've gone up, but to make it as simple as score a goal, go +1. You can get multiples in a game. You can be James Neal and get 4 in a game. You can get +4. Certainly I and many others had thought of something like that, maybe being a bit more, I don't know, doing it that way, being a bit more better tied to actual hockey and getting people to kind of watch actual hockey a little bit more based off of kind of what they had going on, which is really what fantasy in general, having started almost 25 years ago, was part of why that whole thing even came about in the first place. OG Sour Dude left us. So I'm literally talking to myself. That's fun. All right, so for the replay, I'll just leave this up here for somebody to watch later. It means I'll hopefully be able to make it even quicker, quicker. I think they're both kind of okay. Although hopefully when this is done, I'm actually going to watch a movie about people creating a dictionary, the original one. Didn't even know that was a movie. But all right, it's on the queue next. Who knows if I'll get through it. I mean, it is 1:30 a.m. So who knows? Anyways, yeah. So stuff like that, and being able to understand, some of the general, lower overalls. Admittedly, certain players, obviously Panarin, Kane, and it seems like then I'm being a homer and only talking about Chicago players, current and former. But I think like even Tarasenko, others. Obviously, there was a huge issue with Draisaitl with his endurance when it initially came out, and they got enough guff from the game changers to get that fixed. For the most part, it's still super low, but it's at least not completely unmanageable the way it was when it first came out. And oddly, it didn't seem to impact his the price that he was going for in the auction house once they made that change. And I try to put enough general faith in the general community that they don't have to see a headline on either their local paper or on some sort of sports thing like ESPN or something, so talking about like, hey, the endurance was fixed for Leon Draisaitl's card in NHL 20, in order for them to like figure out that it had happened, and therefore the value should have gone up. But admittedly, even before this event that was literally supposed to be about boosting endurance and then a little bit of deking, because you drink Gatorade and all of a sudden you have your endurance back. Not really. I actually love Gatorade. I know it's terrible for you specifically, but it's still great. Specifically the flavors that they have here. I don't know what I honestly have no idea what the fuck Cool Blue is supposed to be. But lemon lime and fruit punch are still my jam. Original lemon lime, and then from there, moving to the second one they did, fruit punch. So you can just stick with those. I don't go for the extra ones and the frost crap and all that other stuff. So it is actually kind of fun for me to see those things, and would prefer if I would prefer being able to actually drink one right now. But again, probably not much of a good idea at 1:30 in the morning usually. However, having said all that, because I feel like I didn't give the caveats in the first two super long marathons. And again, this is not going to be a marathon. That about how there were certain things that either I hadn't thought of, or maybe that I initially upon hearing them was like, it's not that great. Noticing and then pointing it out, that every single 80 plus base position player came with a player only synergy, meaning that like on day one, if you wanted to have your whole team be 80 and above, they didn't have to be 87s, which was the max for forwards. They didn't have to be 85s, which is the max for defenders. And outside of icons, Price and probably Vasilevsky as well were 84s. So you didn't have to have the highest possible rating for base cards to start off with, but even just literally kind of anything 80 plus, it definitely seemed weird to me. And also, coaches were impossible to get in the beginning of the year, and like say like trust me, I know. I opened in the first day. So as soon as EA Access ended and like the official 3-day early access from the pre-order began, almost all of those 3 days, like straight, like no breaks, no sleep for the most part. I think I might have slept for like an hour or something like that. Almost the entire full 3 days. I probably played a couple games, like just to do whatever was required as far as dailies or whatever like that. and might have done a couple like challenges just to kind of see how I felt like the game was playing. But for the most part, it was almost exclusively just ripping packs. Wasn't really. I tried a couple of the base ones when it, at times when it wasn't seeming like the premiums were giving much of anything, and really at that time didn't feel like there was much. Super, super, super small sample size, but didn't really feel like I was getting much out of the base pack. And being that, those are effectively $1 per if you buy them at that price, and I don't feel like doing the math to figure out how much they would be if you spent 100 without any discounts on 12,000 points at a time, which I was doing a ton of. But just on the base one, if you bought per pack. 100 points is $1. Compared to that, the premium 150 points is $1.50. So I mean, it is absolutely a 50% increase, which normally seems like a huge deal. But I don't know. At least for me, on day one, not only because you get more cards in general, and that was basically all I was doing was just kind of filling up the kitty with as much content as I possibly could, and admittedly quick sold way more than I should have, not kind of realizing the later value that they would have. But at the same time, when you're opening up on day one literally thousands of those packs, and not really getting a ton of the huge pulls, very few even of like the master icon players, then it definitely seems like the thing to do is to, instead of like putting up 25 cards at a time and like hoping that, I don't know, all of them sell or most of them sell or whatever, particularly in a market that it definitely hasn't figured itself out yet. It actually kind of almost seems like it just started to figure itself out right as I got banned from it for 7 days. So that's also fun. Plus I had 1 million of my coins stolen from me from the game, so also fun. But like day one, the market kind of had no idea what was going on with it, and certainly I, even with the quick sells that I was doing, I could have maybe then turned around and saw some cards, whether they're player cards or not, that might have been undervalued. I mean, if there was like a gold coach that would have been going for I don't know, like 1K, 2K, even, like that would have been a huge steal because you turn around and sell it for 30. But I didn't see a lot of that, and I also wasn't really like playing the market. I haven't really played the market much at all this year. I put a tweet out about that, about why specifically I, of all people, with an advanced degree in literally that and work experience in literally that, why I just have no desire really to do that. So I don't know what. Why was I talking about premium packs at the beginning of the year? I have no idea now. Yeah, what does that have to do with anything? I believe I got into that by just talking about like, trust me, I've opened up a bunch of packs or something. I don't know. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank here. So I guess part of what maybe this is what I was going with there, was just saying like in being able to build a team with any of those cards that I'd had from those packs that I may have liked or whatever, particularly having more than enough to be able to take kind of any combination that I wanted of 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, 2 goalies, and if I'd happened to have a coach card, I think I did have I think I'd pulled at least like bronze or whatever at that point. Would have meant that it's literally impossible to activate even a single team-based synergy with that. Even if you had an icon that was giving you +2 to one team-based synergy and +1 to another, and you had 2 of those as your goalie, and I would just make it crazy. Nobody had this, but say you had a gold coach as well, who was also towards that synergy. I guess that's your best case scenarios, that you had 2 goalies that are both giving you +2 to 1 synergy. That's 4 points, +3 from the coach. You're getting none from the players. And the lowest one as far as points needed to activate a team one is Takeaway Kings, probably one of my least favorite. That requires 8. All the other ones require 10. So you're never having any of those activated with a strictly pure kind of quote unquote gold rare cards. Because again, all of those position players only have team-based synergies, and there's nothing wrong with some of the team-based synergies. Particularly X Factor was like the day one go-to, and a couple others that weren't really all that bad either. Weren't the worst to have in those early games. And again, I don't play competitively, so it wasn't so much about being able to put up somebody that was going to be better at a human opponent or whatever. It was more so just kind of getting through some challenges and getting your dailies done and stuff like that was all I was really cared about at that point. So okay, so I understand why I said that was just to point out how 80 you didn't have any team synergies in the beginning. Okay, I don't know where I was going with it yet, honestly. So back to the stupid event. I still contend, and I guess there's a chance when this 2-week event is ended that they will do one similar to the one that I guess I'd say I more or less proposed, which was sort of mostly in line with the American version of Thanksgiving, but also would have included this Monday, which I understand is a date in Canada with Remembrance Day. Also here in America, it's Veterans Day. It's a big deal. So to have the event happen during Veterans Day and technically end before Thanksgiving, but still could have had, in my opinion, kind of a American Thanksgiving type of theme to it, as previous ones have had, and they didn't have to go and specifically call it Thanksgiving. They didn't this year with the Heavy Hitters event, which was literally the same as the Halloween event last year. It had the exact same synergy and the same types of players, just big body players who will knock the absolute shit out of you, but generally not able to do much else besides that. They absolutely, in my mind, could have done the equivalent of a Thanksgiving event without having to actually say the words and put the holiday up there or whatever. So I admittedly thought that's what it was going to be. I thought it was going to be kind of like an American Sniper type of theme, and literally Sniper play style, where you see that here is a two-way forward. That's what TWF stands for, if you've got no idea. So Sniper on any card lists as SNP. Of whether those play styles mean anything as far as the how they play in any hut modes. Definitely does seem to be a bit more of a factor in franchise, at least in terms of kind of getting a sense of how a player may play and develop, and which aspects of their game they may be looking to develop if you more or less leave them alone and kind of do your best to kind of help them progress, but not really like kind of forcing them into anything or whatever. So I thought it could have been that. I guess having passed Veterans Day, but having the next event start before Thanksgiving, and then technically, even if it only goes for a week, it will include the holiday of Thanksgiving. So there's a chance that kind of thing could happen. And it definitely seems like, for me, if you're just looking at like overall face stats, skate is kind of part of the point of why I don't like this event. Skate is basically done. It's not like everyone's already at 99, but they will get there at some point. There's no reason, in my opinion, to kind of force that to happen right now. People can get SP activated as the team-based synergy. They can get X Factor or Workhorse as player-based synergies to boost even further if they need to. There are absolutely an entire plethora of general icons, but mostly the important part is the Silver Master icons that are just way too slow and can't keep up with most of the rest of the players in the game, who are considerably quicker, faster, and all that. But at the same time, it's like, just move on to the Gold Master icons at some point and give these guys a boost. I think that whole thing of at least a couple more because we've had some. We've had Chelios, Ronick, Messier technically, which only really upped his wrist shot power from 91 to 99, and that was it. Nothing else changed other than the synergies for him, but it still counts. So Messier, Chelios, Ronick, and Yzerman, with half of those, Ronick and Yzerman being able to upgrade to the 90 overall Master Set players that were part of the original event, the classic NHL event. So those cards already existed, but you had the ability to turn your Silver Masters into those, and especially if it was like, basically for free. If it's like, hey, if you have these, you get these cards instead by just putting them into a set. If you're willing to take a tradable or untradeable version of either one of those two cards, you get an untradeable version of the the 90 MSP for both of those cards. I feel like if you go to that extreme with it, then it absolutely is a thing that like every single person should have done, because they're definitely way better cards. The other two, as I already mentioned, what the difference was with Messier. With Messier, there was a leader's card, and it was during that event was the ability to that transition, and then in the next event, the heavy hitters, they did the one with Chelios, and again, it was during the event that you could do that, and all four of those are still available as part of Sunsets. Now, also technically, in Sunsets, there's a couple other things, including taking the 90 MSP Wayne Gretzky from the original classic NHL event that is literally just 90s across the board, where you see like Hayton here, he's got 93 acceleration, agility, and speed, some 80s in his shots, some 80s in his hand deftness, etc. Literally every single one of those is just a 90 across the board on that Gretzky, and you turn it in with, I don't know, X number of collectibles, and you get the 91 overall Silver Master icon, which is potentially the best card that still exists in the game today, and obviously was either the best card or the second best card, depending on who you ask, on day one with the release. Same as last year, but last year they were 99, so a little bit different. So anyway, yeah. So there was that event as a sunset, and then there's also, you can convert your fantasy Nolan Patrick, since he's not playing from injury, into an Oscar Lindblom, who has already put up a couple goals since that card was created. That's in Sunsets as well, and I believe that's it as far as what's in Sunsets. So it's technically being able to create 4 90 MSPs, and then also turning one 90 MSP into a 91 Silver Master Icon MSP. So there's that, and that's fun. And again, the Messier was basically nothing. He technically switches teams. It's a different card art. It's a different, whole like events set, whatever. But the actual impact to the changes underlying was literally just +8 from wrist shot power being 91 to 99, and different synergies that, at least for me, I'm not hardcore to say like that. I feel like one set of synergies were better than the other, except that I think generally I kind of liked the Silver Master Icon synergies a little bit better than the leaders version. It was only one gold collectible, which at the time I was able to get for less than 45K if I was even buying them. Now they're quite a bit more with this event, because you got to use 12 to get a Master Set player now. So anyway, moving on to this event, even if you already say, okay, we're going to do Young Stars, fine, that's one thing. Then you're going to say, okay, we're going to do these types of players, almost exclusively players that are either, not actually playing in the NHL yet, or they're into maybe their first season, including players that literally have not even been drafted yet. Those to me should have been 2 separate events. So Young Stars for me should have been actual stars. Hard to argue, as I've said in both of the previous broadcasts, that EP40 is not a star at the moment, but admittedly, having a fantastic first year, continuing into the beginning of the second year here. No sort of sophomore slump for him there. Um, Definitely seems to be suggesting that he's gonna, have a pretty, barring again injury plague, whatever, he's gonna have a pretty decent career. Might even actually be able to progress on certain things. I don't know. Could maybe start, eating some cheeseburgers, putting on a little bit, so that he doesn't have, in the game like this where it just trolls him so hard as far as his balance attribute or stat goes, where it's like, yeah, I mean, you you hit him with a feather, he's gonna fall down. Um, so it's whatever. I think that he's perfectly fine, and it's difficult to argue that he's not currently a star. Probably makes All-Star team this year, even though most of the players and a lot of the media and stuff like that almost don't care at all about that event and the other events that surround it. But it's fun for the fans and stuff like that. So he could do that, and so it's difficult to say, hey, a guy who was rookie of the year, got to play in the playoffs and is continuing into the second year, probably will be an All-Star in the second year. I don't think we'll win any awards. I'm guessing. I have no way of knowing, obviously, but I wouldn't put a lot of faith in that happening this year. Um, it's difficult to be like, hey, this guy is not a star. He basically is, but at the same time, two things. Number one, he's really kind of the only one in the entire group that should be considered a current star. And even with that, as I said, it's a bit of a caveat. You put together a good first year, great. You put together the beginning of decent play, uh, anywhere from 12 to 20 games, depending on what team you're on or whatever, of solid performance in the second year. Sure, looks good, but I mean, like here in Chicago, in a totally different sport, we obviously had the guys of Kane and Taves that were pretty good from early on, but in a totally different sport, we had Chris Bryant had rookie of the year his first year, All-Star second year, and admittedly has been pretty good, compared to his counterparts in the rest of the league throughout his career so far. But there's no, necessarily guarantee on that. You can absolutely be rookie of the year in any sport, hit sophomore slump, and just be done with your career, or be rookie of the year, have an okay second year, and then just mostly just kind of fall off, and within whatever 5-6 years, people are like completely forgetting who you are. Um, so I don't think that any year, at any point in time, even if it's the peak year for the greatest player who's ever played, which I guess is Gretzky, or like one of the greatest that's still playing and looking to finish his career soon, which I guess we'll go with Ovi on that one. Um, if Ovi could, and this is just me. I know I'm one of the few that thinks this way, but like Ovi could have, he hasn't had yet, so he's going to have it towards the end of his career, and it would certainly get him closer to Gretzky's number. But he could have a season in which he gets 200. I'm not saying like 200 plus, but like just literally exactly 200 goals. That would be insane. That would be absurd. Everyone would be definitely out of their minds with that sort of thing happening. I would still argue that one season does not make his career. It's more so in the context of he did that as part of a larger, broader, um, um, crap, I forgot the word for that, but a broader scope um, of the resume of like things that he'd been able to put through over the course of his career, and in that context, it for me at least looks that much more phenomenal, but still doesn't make the career for anybody. I just view that in all sports. I don't think that a single year for any player in any sport ever makes that player's career. It can definitely turn them in from basically a no-name to somebody who's really well known. Um, Going back to the Cubs as an example, especially and who I'm going to talk about by just saying that now he's the coach there. But you look at David Ross. I mean, I just generally not exactly the best statistically speaking, as far as the old school stats. Maybe solid on sabermetrics that I've never bothered to look at for him. But was, effectively a role player as well as a role model as he moved on at the end of his career, and was perfect for that team at that time to be kind of the old guy giving him the wisdom. They literally called him Grandpa Rossi, and yet still as a in Game 7 as a sub who gets brought into the game to catch because they brought in the starting pitcher John Lester in relief. I will try not to say more about that situation without going off on tangents about all the poor decisions that Joe Madden made as head coach here, but that was one of them. But he brings him in. Once he's bringing him in, you got to bring Rossi in to catch him. That he was part of the reason why he was brought here, was to literally catch Lester and then to catch some other games too. He gets brought in to do that, and in his at bat, after what looked like he had a concussion from getting the ball bouncing off of the ground or maybe off of a foul tip, or I forget exactly which it was, but into his catcher mask. It was into the ground because it hit his mask and he fell down and looked like he had no idea what was going on, and then somebody was able to score from third because of that. And in the very next inning, I believe he was first up. I don't know if it was first pitch. I'm kind of forgetting that part of it, but hits it out, and it wasn't like, a wall scraper that edged on the like on either side of the foul post, either pulled or opposite field or whatever. It was actually almost dead center, right center. Definitely hit it pretty well. Was mic'd up. Didn't make a sound, let alone a word, as he hit it, as he rounded the bases, and then even getting into the dugout, was still basically not saying anything, as his teammates were mobbing him as to how excited they were for him, probably knowing that it was a very good chance that was going to be his final at bat in the major leagues. So certainly, and then you go and you do Dancing with the Stars and you do a bunch of media stuff, and then that leads to you being able to pick up the manager position for that same team at the Cubs, despite having played for a bunch of other teams, including the Red Sox when Lester was there. It kind of seems like that final year with the first ever Cubs World Series win in 108 years was a way in which he had a single season to more or less define his career. I would still say in that example that's not really true, but it's a little bit better of an example than to say somebody who comes storm burning out of the box in their first year in whatever sport it is, especially good enough to win Rookie of the Year, potentially up against good competition, and then just things happen from there. It doesn't pan out. So, talked about that way too long, but that's just my whole thing about how that's kind of the nicest that I can be towards EP40, because I hated him for a year and a half leading up to finally him getting that Rookie of the Year at the end of the year. And moving into this year, I've finally been able to kind of move past that personally a little bit, as I realize that people are gonna just be just irrationally exuberant about certain folks, and I think once the reality of their play starts to set in, then sometimes maybe the expectations and the talk about second coming and all that crap, starts to fade at least a little bit, and it becomes more, not necessarily palatable, but at least more like I can deal with it a little bit more without just being like, oh, this is absolutely absurd. He's for sure a good player, but it seemed definitely clear that expectations were way too high, and therefore, as he was playing that first season and doing pretty well, it seemed like was still just extremely overrated, not just in Vancouver, but in other places as well. So we move on, we just say, okay, fine, he's a star currently, but he's still definitely going to be a person who, having said all that, I'm giving him positive praise to say that he's probably going to get better as he ages, and that's literally a description of every single player that is in this event. So for me, I think again it's two different events. You have a thing that you call the Young Stars event, and then you have a thing that would include players like this. They should have been separated. They should have been handled completely differently. You do Young Stars again with Line. Matthews is young enough. Clayton Keller. There's a good enough number of players who would be at least, I don't know, 26 and younger, who are have put together more than a year, and are legitimate stars at this point. In many cases, anybody that you'd list there would probably be at least a two-time All-Star. And yet, obviously, we're not talking about guys who are at the tail ends of their careers. But that's what a young stars should have been. You can go in this game into draft champions, and I think they actually call it young stars there. But you can choose that as one of your options. Generally, you're much better off going with snipers, and you could actually do that literally right now and get a bunch of these cards from this event from that if they include anybody that they think has good shots. Certainly MSPs are possible to get pulled in that sense because they all have pretty decent shots. But you'd also get all those crazy good prime times that are out until Tuesday with Ovi and McKinnon and Patty Kane and others, as well as the team of the week that's also pretty good with Besser and EP. If you can't get his Young Stars MSP from that draft, you could possibly get his team of the week card, which is like only a couple points lower, and overall it's a pretty good card as well. So I would definitely recommend that. But if you kind of wanted to see young players, the poster kid on that event last year and this year again is Patrick Line. So it can certainly be specifically guys like Barrett Hayton, who's now 19 and has been in that group for 3 years in this game. But it would also include those guys who are still young or younger, but they're not 37-year-old guys that are either playing overseas or still in the NHL and dominating their division as a goal. But they're they're younger guys, but generally are also going to be ones that are especially if they're going to be their base cards, they're going to be a little bit higher rated cards, and they're going to be stuff that wouldn't completely frustrate you playing even just a single game or two in draft champions with them. So I think that that's what a Young Stars event should have been. I don't consider almost any of these guys to be considered stars right now. You could say that they're stars wherever they're playing, in juniors, overseas. Hayton's being listed as being on the Coyotes. As much as I've tried to follow him, and they had Hossa, which I felt like I wanted to follow him. I wanted to see how Kessel was doing this year, and I see a fair amount of tweets and stuff like that about the Coyotes, and yet I don't know. I've missed almost all of their games. It can be difficult for me to get certain games here, especially if the Blackhawks are playing at the time. And it just seems like I've kind of missed their games when I have tried to watch, or if I've watched kind of replays through the the NHL channel or whatever. I don't know, just seems like certain stuff that I would be looking for to try to look at that team. Again, whether it was like Kessel, Hossa, Hayton, others, they're kind of not there. OEL and plenty of others, or even Keller at times. They seem to be able to get noticed during the broadcast and therefore also on the highlights, but I'm not necessarily seeing a ton of the things that I anticipated tuning in to see more of. But it is what it is, right? So the whole point is these guys I don't think are current NHL stars, so to me it's a misleading name of the event. However, I said they should be two different events, and both events should happen. You should add the young stars with actual stars, and made some really cool cards there with those guys. These guys, though, should have been part of a flash forward event. Now, most people who played the game know what that type of event is referred to as. I think that it would probably have to be done slightly differently this year than it had been done in previous years. But look at this card here with Barrett Hayton. You see he pretty much does not need help with his speed. This is only an 84 overall. It's the second lowest overall rated card that any card in the first week could have. So there's that. And all of these things are just increases from his base card, except for endurance and usually deking, although at 88, I don't know how much of a boost he got from his deking stat. Compared to the other hand definite stats that are at 82, it looks like I guess he might have gotten at least a little bit of one. Um, but he does not really need all that much help in the speed, and he didn't get it from this event. I mean, just moving it up to an 84 from the base just meant that, like let's say that his base card was an 80, it's not, but if it was, it would mean that, all those basically got +4. So instead of being 93, they were 89. And so literally any 84 that they would have created without any specific boosts or whatever would have had that anyways. So I'm fine with that. I don't think that he needs help with speed, and it's pretty much across the board. There aren't really any players in this event at all that needed help with their speed. Clearly, if they're 89, 90, there's only one of each of those, or the 591s. One of which being a goalie, though, they're generally going to have help with their skate stats and their speed, just from having those higher overall that are linearly progressed from any of the cards that they've had up to that point, the base cards and the informs that have come out, if they've had any. So instead, for me, I think you got to look at Barrett Hayton specifically, and say, here's where he's at 19. Let's flash forward to when he's 20, at least 26, 27, 28 for forwards. I think that's kind of sort of the sweet spot. For defenders, maybe even like 29 or 30. Whatever you'd kind of consider to be his potentially peak year or years around that area. And say, like, what would you expect him to look like at that time? If you want to say that these guys, particularly, again, the guy that hasn't even been drafted yet, hasn't played a single minute in the NHL yet, if you honestly think that, like, none of them are ever going to develop at all, first off, how your game plays in franchise is completely misleading then. But also, like, they're going to. Maybe not every single one that's in here, maybe not all 12 of the underlying cards, which again are the ones that I have the problem with as opposed to the MSPs. But you take Hayton, in year 2, that I've been paying attention to his card specifically. His diamond card, from what I remember, basically around the new year, around the beginning of January last year, was way better than this card. And I understand that generally cards were better last year as far as overall rating and how they played compared to that, and that was kind of a necessity when you start the game with potentially having 2 99 overall cards that are literally 99 in every single category on day 1. You kind of have to fill it with some other players that are pretty decent as well, even though last year also the highest base was 87 to start with. You still kind of had to find ways to be able to get things up a bit, and certainly the alumni to legend upgrade process initially was part of being able to create some of those spots for some higher rated players to get added to the teams. So when his diamond came out, I mean, granted it's almost not a full 2 months, but just shy of 2 months from now, last year. Then yeah, I would suspect that again this year, just into the new year, it's going to be a very different landscape in terms of what types of cards are going to be out there. So it's very easy to kind of nitpick like this and say, hey, his card last year, early January, was way better than this card that came out, at the end of the first week of November, as opposed to the first week of January. But those 2 months in general are going to have a huge impact on a game which has kind of at best maybe 9 to 11 months worth of legs. If it's me and I like to play for a true end game, or just kind of being generous, since there's plenty that quit at different times. I quit a couple times during the course of the year, but for totally different reasons. But other people that are going to be kind of done with the whole game around that time, around January or soon thereafter. Um, but yeah, it's just, I mean, I'd have to literally go back into NHL 19. I think it was an untradeable for me, so I think I still have it on my collection. If I don't, maybe I could get lucky and see somebody who's still putting it up on the auction house. Because I don't think that looking through the collection for cards that you don't have, I don't think was as easy last year as it is this year. But maybe I'm off on that, and I can go do that. I haven't really touched much of NHL 19 since this game came out, but my not perfect recollection was that diamond card for Barrett Hayton was way better than this one. I mean, he definitely had some boosted speed stats, which was pretty helpful, even though, again, those were mostly just a function of bringing his overall rating up from what his base card was. But he also had shot. For me, maybe it's just that this year's a little bit different or whatever. I'm not sure. But 86 on the slap shot power and wrist shot power, and 82 wrist shot accuracy and 81 slap shot accuracy for a quote unquote center. He is an 85 faceoff. He can take some faceoffs for some people. Has no awareness, 82 and 79. Not really much in terms of handles. His deking is fine. He's 6'1", 190. He just doesn't have the body. He's not 77 on body checking and 82 on strength. I don't care or look really much at aggression, discipline, and fighting skills, so they're math for me. 87 durability is okay. Poise at 72 is terrible, but also completely understandable if you're looking at a 19-year-old who hasn't played a full year in the NHL. As far as like what they're currently at, and that's really my huge bone to pick with this event and how it was brought out, is that to me it's a complete lost opportunity, particularly because I can't imagine that these exact cards are going to have cards like that I think would be tremendous to have, whether the event happened now or you want to wait until more like, I don't know, like March, when there's also a bunch of really like high-end cards out or whatever. But I think that this is a huge lost opportunity. If you just take Barrett Hayton specifically, but also some of the other players in this event, Jack Hughes, that I talked about, who I don't have, and probably the hardest troll, outside of this, that I picked up in I think it's 85. Jesus. Wow. Okay. Who is it? Well, first off, whoever it is that I can't remember off the top of my head for some reason is a player who like already has cards with informs, especially that are pretty close to that 85 overall anyways. So it's not really much of a boost outside of a little bit for sure on the endurance and a very small tweak to his deking, and I don't know why I can't think of who that is. Probably because I'm so starting to rile myself up again about how much I have disdain for this event. But whoever that is that I had, he and Hayton, a little bit of Jack Hughes, and maybe a couple others on that list of 12, as well as maybe some others who I felt like should have been included who necessarily weren't. But again, on that list of 12, like off the top of my head, like Suzuki for sure. There are some others in there who I felt like absolutely could have been really, really well handled if instead you said, okay, here's the guy at 19, here's his current stats. Literally call it a flash forward if you have to. I understand they've got some issues with being able to use some older terminology that they've used. Call the flash forward because we know that that's what the event would actually be. It's way too long of a title, but it's basically like future stars of tomorrow, today, but with their boost as to what they would be in the. So that doesn't make any sense. But you do that, and so his shots for sure are gonna get better. He's a two-way forward. He's capable of playing offensively. His awareness across the board, both sides of the ice, but at a minimum for sure his offensive awareness is going to go up. If you assume that defensive awareness goes up, how, in the world would shot blocking, stick checking, and then maybe even body checking as he adds a little bit of weight onto him, how would those not go up as well? Poise, again, at 72 being terrible, but also completely understandable for a 19-year-old when he comes into his own. And it isn't if, it's not a when, but the whole point of the fun of the event for, prospects and future stars is to be like, hey, what would happen if all these guys just really popped off? There's only 12 of them, so it's not like you're ruining the game by putting off like 12 fun cards. They don't have to be even in the 90s overall, but some of the underlying stats absolutely should be, closer to that. Like his shot power, in my opinion, should be much closer to 90. The accuracy should be much closer to 85, and suddenly it becomes more of a usable card. For me, this specific card, as a flash forward, should be pretty much close to at least the base cards of McDavid, Kucherov, and Matthews, and potentially even slightly better than certainly the base cards, as well as some of the informs that they've had so far, with the knowledge that like this is the best that he's going to get in this year's version of the game. Outside of, again, I don't know why I can't think of who the hell my 85 is that I have that I also felt was like a huge troll. I'll go look at the set before I finish this. I also have to make sure I get this done in under an hour, otherwise it's going to be hard for me to prove that this was a silver reroll and not a gold one. Yeah, whoever that is, I need to go figure that out very quickly, because it was a huge troll to get that card as well, because they were the ones that I had pointed out where I was like, this is absurd that these are as low rated as they are, and they didn't get any sort of boosts in terms of like, hey, here's where the potential could go, because the diamonds specifically seemed like they certainly got that, or they just got high enough rated, because the early ones were kind of like 86 overall, and then later, some of them were, into the 90s, when there were more cards like that had come out. And just simply doing that, if you take a guy that was maybe even like a 70, 72 overall, and then you turn him into a 90, obviously he's going to have huge boosts. His skates are going to be maxed, and then he's going to have some pretty solid shot and some other stats that you might care about as well. So again, I feel like you take this specific card, even if you turn him into even just like a 25, 26-year-old, he's going to have more poise. Durability should be able to increase a little bit. The guys that have super fast speed, where I don't think that he's there with 93s, some of those might be able to see some decreases actually as they get a little bit more age on them, possibly getting a little bit more weight on them, which would be kind of a weird thing for the game to do, but I think it'd be a cool little touch. And then obviously shot being increased, which is just, it's whatever it is. And then depending upon how they, how you would guess that they would progress, maybe they'd be increasing their hand deftness, specifically deking as it was boosted in this one. As I said, the awareness stats, the defensive side of the ice with shot blocking, stick checking, maybe even body checking as well. But then even especially for a center, not only to have the face-offs get up a little bit higher, but to have that offensive awareness tied with hand-eye would be an absolutely huge thing to do, and would mean that particularly in an extremely crowded field of left-handed shot forwards, none of which you can play on even strength defensive lines, you can start to play a card like this as a center, again with particularly if it had some slightly higher boosted face-off stats, slightly higher shot stats, but really just for sure a significant bump in the offensive awareness and hand-eye would make it that you put him on a line that does crash the net, and just start kind of firing those pucks at the net. He's going to get some deflection goals. So I feel like this is severely lacking, and he's got no shot whatsoever of ever making my team. Plus it has synergies that I have no interest in whatsoever. Breakout Master is a little bit better than Magician, and it's only because Magician is absolutely the worst synergy in the game. So it is what it is, and I definitely felt like this was a super hard troll from the game as a silver reroll. Unfortunately, I did not have a gameplay recording going as this was coming up, because I've been able to do a couple, I don't know, a few of these so far today since waking up recently. As after putting in the almost full day, split into two with a little bit of break in it. For I don't even remember what. Maybe I was watching some stuff. Maybe I ate some stuff. I don't really remember. Um, like technically yesterday, so not really meaning it ended technically yesterday being Saturday, but it had begun on Friday. So I kind of knew that I was going to be hitting a wall, and that's part of the reason why the last for sure hour, if not 2.5 hours of that was just absurd and had almost nothing to do with the game or meaning this game or hockey at all. But yeah, this is a silver reroll. I'm gonna open up this last card here, and then I'm gonna hopefully it's been less than an hour. Don't remember from the timer. I think it's close. That I'll be able to show the timer coming down on the silver reroll, and the the gold does not. So I'll be able to show that that's what I got from that. But how about we get like I don't know one of the 391 MSPs that I don't have yet as the second one in the silver reroll to be basically the best reroll that you've ever had, considering you just trolled me super hard with an untradeable card that I will play one game with somewhere, probably just as a quick hut challenge so I don't screw stuff up, and have no other use for the card, and potentially could just put it into another reroll later in the year. How about this? How about the second one's awesome too, right? Let's just go with it. Oh, it's another 80. It's not the worst. All right, so I'm sending this collection. You're gonna see I'm gonna pop back to my inbox from there, but when I click, god damn it, the timer went away. But you do see that I had 7 out of 8 over here, and they're cards I'm hiding from like myself from being able to potentially get them into a reroll. So I'm not doing the gold upgrades. So what the hell? As long as I'm here, it's been an hour. I don't know why it took an hour to do that. We'll do another one. This one is on stream, and this one I will do a gameplay recording. Let's see if we can keep it rolling. I mean, to me, I don't disparage using 8 silver cards that I have no interest in whatsoever for untradeable 84 event cards that I also have no interest in putting into my team moving forward, but I'll play a game or two with them. So make it fun. Troll me even harder. No, okay. So this is why I have not been even bothering. Let's close the gameplay recording. Whenever you're ready, bud. Thank you. So this is why I've not been even doing the gameplay recordings on this, because this is basically like the best that I've been getting out of these. Is just even 178, let alone 278s. I've had plenty that were 274s, and that's just how it works, and the RNG and all that fun stuff. But again, those cards in the prime times being available until Tuesday. Obviously, Team of the Week is still continuing through Tuesday as well. And again, I've got a week's worth of silvers right now. Plus, I did a couple. I did the 1 pack. I did the lemon lime set, and I don't know. I guess that only gave me 2 extra silver, so that was not really worth pointing out. But I've got enough. I had enough silvers to do almost a full week if I did every single hour. 24 hours a day for 7 days. Just shy of 7 days. I'd have enough to be able to do this. And at a minimum, it's going to be giving me 2 gold players, such as this, that I can just turn into other rerolls, like for say the other MSP that I want from the from this Future Stars event. So I said I had nothing more as far as content goes. I don't know. I mean, I know why. I unprepared, and all that jazz. I just don't. Need to just not be jumping on the mic with these things, but I thought it was absolutely hilarious, and I did say I was going to go over to the event under collection, and the event items, and then the Gatorade. And as soon as I see it, I'd be so annoyed that I couldn't remember who that was. Oh yeah, I'm so annoyed. Kale McCarr. So. Yeah, for me, Cale Makar, maybe Jack Hughes, Barrett Hayton for sure, though, and then a little bit of Nick Suzuki. Like, they'd be the ones that would be easiest for me to get trolled the hardest. The only able to do once a week, and therefore you only get 1 shot at the week 1 cards. I got Greenway as my untradeable from the almost 100,000 coin set. And those are his stats as a left wing, shoots left-handed, power forward, 6'6", 227, 83 body checking, 86 strength, and boosted endurance at 95. Comes with wingman, so you can get that acceleration up from 89 to 92. And rock solid, which is supposed to be about hits. So he's a power forward who's really there for the hits. Um, Obviously was super pissed that as far as the list goes, and literally the lowest card on there. But later, I looked at the Ethan Bear and decided that it definitely seems like this is even a worse card. So I guess I could have done better. I mean, better. I guess I could have done worse than the worst one overall. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here on the Kel McCarr again. He's barring injury or plague, he's going to have informs that are going to be above 85 before the end of the year, let alone any specials that might come from any sort of awards or I don't see him really getting traded, but like trade deadline, even if there's they sometimes do the trade deadline guys, even if there's just like a rumor that they might get moved or whatever. To me, it would seem super strange if he was even part of a rumor for somebody to be moved. It seems like the kind of thing that somebody would start from a team who's trying to compete, not just now but also in the future, to try to be like, no, yeah, totally. Like we've heard that they're looking to move McCarr just like to try to see if they could like Jedi mind fuck the Sakic and the Avs to move McCarr over to their team at the deadline. That seems unlikely. He might get some awards. Not really sure what those would be. Certainly, it seems like they're on a trajectory to be able to at least get into the playoffs, and then from there can get some stuff from as far as the playoff cards go, and could potentially be some sort of a pick for team of the year, especially if they do like 4 different teams of the year this year again. Who knows how that's going to be? And if all else fails, if that doesn't happen, if they do free agency cards the way they did last year, where almost every card in the game gets one, and most of them are basically 99s, you should see another one of those out of him as well. But none of that would really matter. He doesn't even necessarily need to get those. Again, barring injury or plague, he's going to have informs that are going to get above 85. They won't have that endurance and that deking on the initial ones, like even on the 85, the 87, the 89. But at some point they get pretty close to that, and all the other stats get up. I mean, as soon as he gets whatever 87 he gets, speed, agility, and acceleration as a base would get maxed at 99. Now, the part of the reason for me why this card was even more of a troll when I got it is because it has X Factor and Workhorse synergy. Most everyone has kind of finally caught on to what I was doing from the beginning of the year, which included 1T efficiency as well, but SP as the team-based synergy to get everyone +3. And you see that if you just have that and you don't activate either one of his player-based synergies, 97 +3 is 100. Then it'll go to 100. There's 99. So he's already 99 in any team that already has SP, even without the player-based synergies activated. Or you could be on a team that doesn't have SP and you get either one, X Factor or Workhorse activated. They both separately add +2 each to speed. You clearly don't need both. It's the dumbest synergies that you could possibly put on this card, and it's just insane. And this one I got from doing the Lemon Lime set today and asked the question on Twitter without any sort of I don't know, intended bias or whatever. It wasn't just about, hey, is this card worth 50k, but is a pack that cost 50k that mostly just included this card worth 50k. Again, a small, quick, young winger with no shot. Shouldn't too much because it is tradable, and I got to imagine at some point I'll be able to actually participate in the auction house again. Well, at first I was going to say answer is yes, but I guess maybe not. Maybe I have to try to play the market, which I don't really want to do. But it seems as though there's definitely some people who are looking to go a little bit more with him and maybe more people had pulled them. Maybe more people like me had done the lemon lime set and happened to get that specific card. Um, but I mean, even if this like 47 was about the average, that plus a couple thousand from the other cards meant that I could more or less break even on that set. I don't really want to be breaking even with sets, but it is what it is. Um, there's the rest of the cards. I mean, again, across the board, I think almost every single one of these are players that I would love to be able to see, what they would look like in terms of, kind of what their potential, for growth would be. Seems like everyone else is either a huge fan or very much in favor of the event. I'm just not so much. So with that, I'm going to bid you adieu, and I really hope that that is it for tonight. Be pretty sweet to be able to pass out again tonight the way that I did last time I hit a wall, but who knows?